Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Steve C. Prasad, coming to you from the campus of Binghamton University. Welcome to Broadway on a Budget. This is a webinar that's part of the Binghamton Learning Network webinar series, kind of changing up the energy. Usually we're in the noon hour Eastern time and a little bit earlier today with a 10 o'clock start. So hopefully everybody is juiced up with coffee and has plenty of energy. And I certainly have energy to get us going for today. And our presenter has a lot. And so we're very eager to bring in Brian Stoll, which we'll do in a couple of seconds. So this webinar is part of many lifelong learning offerings from your alumni association, and we certainly want people to be engaged with us from wherever they are in the world. And we have many ways that people can do that with a virtual book club, a virtual movie club, the Tier Talk speaker series, the webinar content, and all this is posted online. And the links can be found. We'll put up the Alumni Association website address, binghamton.edu/alumni, binghamton.edu/alumni. That's the place to go. And if you want to get involved with us as a volunteer or come to an event or anything you want is there. News from the Alumni Association, links to our newsletter, magazine, so much. It's a great resource. So check it out. We want today's program to be fun and interactive. We want to take your questions and so send them in. And I'll put up my email address on the screen here. So you can email me at sseepers@binghamton.edu. Start now if you want, and then we can mix these questions in during the show. We won't save them all to the end. We can bring them in when the time is right. So if you're watching on the micro site, there should be a comment box there where you can type in your questions. And if you're watching us on Facebook Live, good morning to you as well. And type in your questions as a comment, and we'll be checking all of that. I've got Jen Gabriel, my colleague, who will be the eye in the sky checking all of that out with me, and we'll bring in these questions whenever we can. So start now. So enough of me. Let's bring in our featured presenter, and I'm very pleased to introduce. Let me pull this down. And here is Brian Stoll, a member of the
Hello.
class of 2011, comes to us today from Long Island. He is a Broadway enthusiast and probably one of the biggest fans of Broadway that I've had the pleasure of meeting. And so certainly lots of things have been going on over the last couple of years on Broadway, disruptions to the industry, but things are coming back and have been coming back. And we're very, very excited about that. And so I remember the last time I went to a show, Brian, was Come From Away, and it
The,
was 2 months before the pandemic happened. It was just insane to think of how close that was to like everything just sort of blowing up after. But very happy it's coming back, and I know you have some great advice on how people can save money on shows and talking about the history of the playbill and the significance of the playbill as a keepsake and something that's just so much tradition over the years on Broadway. So, Brian, welcome. Thank you so much, and we'll give the floor to you.
Thank you. Come From Away is a great show.
It
Um,
was, yeah.
and and when I'll have a slide up that I'll post about watching Broadway from home, and Come From Away is now streaming, if I'm right, on Apple TV Plus, that you can watch it. So let me start the slideshow here. And a little bit about me. As mentioned, I'm a proud Binghamton alumnus, proud Bearcat from class of 2011. And it was around that time, maybe 2010, that I fell in love with theater. And it was the fact that I found out that with your student ID, you could get cheap tickets to Broadway shows. So I jokingly say I had to schlep all the way to Binghamton to find Broadway. And since then, I've seen over 240 shows, and I rarely pay over $60 a ticket. A few years ago, I started giving these talks in person in my neck of the woods. And thanks to Zoom and these virtual platforms, I was able to expand out. A few years ago, Newsday, my local newspaper, was kind enough to highlight me in that sense. And I see that some questions are rolling in, and so I'll going to get to one of the Patty's question in a little bit. But let me get started here. So what we're going to go over today within the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID and Broadway, Broadway's back, seeing shows for under $60, and the playbill. So Broadway theaters increased cleaning protocols in response to coronavirus. That was on March 6th of 2020, which seems like a decade ago. And Hadestown eliminates the stage door greetings due to COVID. That was on March 7th, and if I have time, I'll mention about the stage door. That's one of my favorite parts about Broadway, seeing a show. And then a Broadway usher test positive for COVID-19, and we were off to the races on March 11th. There were 39 plays and musicals that were halted. 16 of them never even made it to opening night. And originally, Broadway was suspending performances just for 3 weeks. And that was extended for 3 months and another 3 months. And before you knew it, we were at about 2 years later. Broadway officially went dark on March 12th of 2020. And I thought I'd briefly mention this lamp that you can see on stage. That's called a ghost light. It's a lamp that's left on stage when all the work is finished in the theater and everyone's gone home for the evening. The orchestra pit can be about 10 feet lower from the stage, so they keep this light on when everyone's left, so no one happens to be walking in the theater or on the stage, falls off the stage, and breaks their neck. There's also superstitions that theaters are inhabited by ghosts, whether it be the ghost of an old actor, someone who used to work in the building, and the ghost light is supposed to keep them from getting into any mischievous behaviors. Many who work on Broadway saw the shutdown at first as a relief. Finally, in a taxing life of doing 8 shows a week, a chance for the bodies to rest and heal. But then, as you can see here, due to lack of uncertainty, depression, and unsure of people's identities, it became challenging. Here's someone that I think was in the cast of Chicago, and she said, "I thought we were going to be shut down for just 3 weeks. I knew how to keep my body in shape. I knew how to keep the choreography fresh in my mind. Then I got pushed back. I stopped reviewing the numbers, stopped working out, stopped really paying attention to myself because I didn't have anything to work towards. And then depression set in." Some quick stats and facts. Broadway alone accounts for more tickets sold each year than all the metropolitan area professional sporting teams combined. The industry pumps in $14 billion annually. Between 2018 to 2019 was Broadway's best attended season on record, grossing almost $2 billion with 15 million patrons. And the average ticket price this past season, combined for plays and musicals, was $125. And I thought it was interesting that the average operating cost was $590,000 per week for musicals. I also wanted to mention, when we had this historic shutdown, the jobs of thousands of people were cast into limbo. The theater industry alone supports over 96,000 people working in Manhattan, and the people working on specific shows add up to just a fraction of that amount. The majority are hotel workers, restaurant workers, shop patrons, and everyone whose lives center around the presence of theater in New York. And I read that the base pay for a Broadway actor is around $2,200 a week in that sense. And let's advance here. We also had many people that passed away due to COVID. And one of the most notable was a gentleman named Nick Cordero, who starred in Rock of Ages, Bullets Over Broadway, Waitress, and A Bronx Tale. He passed away at the young age of 41 after spending 90 days in the ICU, and this was all over the news at that time. And one of the biggest changes since Broadway shut down is that theater content is increasingly appearing on both the small and the big screens. The online audience is a huge audience that theater has been ignoring for far too long. And someone said it would be utterly foolish if people didn't take advantage of that. You can let them do it illegally and profit for it, or you can make it part of the package. One professional said that streaming is part of the industry's future. There's money to be made, and we want to share these productions with as many people as possible. And we need to acknowledge that even when we go on tour, there are still people through either geographic or financial barriers that are not able to see these shows. This is just a quick cross-section of all the great stuff that you can watch right now from the comfort of your home. Steve, we were just talking about Come From Away, which is on Apple TV+. Hamilton is on Disney+. Diana the Musical is on Netflix. And there's more that comes as the year go on. And tourism and Broadway. New York is culture is New York's most invigorating lure. And in 2019, leisure travel, which the arts is a huge component, accounted for 66.6 million visitors to the city. 35% are local residents like us from the New York area and Northeast, and 65% are tourists. And here are all the shows that are currently running on Broadway. And the dates to the right are when they reopened or opened in that sense. And you can see, especially as we get to the second column on the screen, there's a lot of stuff that is going on at the moment. Walking with Ghosts, Take Me Out is coming up again. That won a Tony and is being revived again, and some other great shows. And it was questioned, though, at the time, how does 10, 20, 30, even 40 productions, all essentially starting with zero in ticket sales, manage to reanimate Broadway all at once? How is the industry's limited rehearsal space assigned? When Broadway reopened, it was like an airport. You had 14, 15 shows simultaneously launching off at the same time. They all had to practice and rehearse and things along those lines. You will notice that more shows will come about in the next few months, but especially in the spring. By, I think it is a mid-April or May, I'm not sure what the exact cutoff date, your show has to officially open that season in order to be eligible for the Tony Awards. So that's you'll see a lot of reviews coming out, especially in the spring. And when theater reopened, they hired epidemiologist economist Dr. Blythe Adamson, and she was hired to consult on Passover, which was the first Broadway show to reopen after the pandemic in that sense. And she helped to develop intense protocols to keep the cast and audience safe and minimize the need of needing to cancel or pause a performance. And one of the biggest things that they did was upgrade the HVAC air filtration systems, which basically gets clean, purified air into these very old Broadway theaters. And I'd be remiss if I didn't quickly just mention about diversity in theaters. From 2018 to 2019, 89% of writers and 93% of directors are white. This past season, there were 7 new plays, all by Black writers and Black investors. And you're just seeing a lot more diverse stuff on the screen. Well, not the screen, on the stage. I also wanted to say that during the holiday season, if you recall, last year, almost a year ago, was a very tough time for Broadway, where many shows were canceling or pausing performances. Usually, Broadway grosses around $42 million during the holiday season. Last year, it was $14 million in that sense. And as you can see, I've had to update this slide or basically cross a lot of stuff out. When Broadway first reopened, you had to wear a mask, you had to be fully vaccinated, had to have proof of vaccination. Some shows were doing less performances. There was no stage door and tickets were digital. Now we're somewhat back to how it was before Broadway shut down, that you no longer need to wear a mask. Masks are optional. I still wear one in the theater, and there are a lot of patrons that still do. And a lot of tickets are still digital. They're back to basically the 8 performances a week, and the stage door is somewhat opening up again. So before I get to the money-saving tips, which is on the next slide after this, I thought I'd mention my first Broadway show. And I usually like to ask yours. If you're able to, if you want to, you can send it in. It's always interesting to hear what people's first shows were. Mine was A Diary of Anne Frank back in 1997. I don't have much memory of this show. I mean, I know the show, but I don't remember this actual production. It was a few years later I had my first memory when I went to see Sly Fox on Broadway with Richard Dreyfuss and Jesse from Saved by the Bell. And I'd like to say I had a positive experience, but I was a young kid sitting in the mezzanine of the Barrymore Theater, and I guess I was moving around a lot in my seat. I couldn't get comfortable. And an older lady behind me, she may have only been 30, but she seemed like an old lady to me at the time, yelled at me in intermission for moving around. And I'd like to say that's the last time I've ever been yelled at in a theater. But if you'd see me in person, I'm semi-tall. I'm 5'11". And Broadway theaters aren't made for tall people. They're not made for short people. They're basically made for munchkins. So now I'm going to get to those the money-saving tips that you wanted to hear. And at the very end, or you can even put it on now, you're welcome to send me an email. And I actually have a handout that it's Stoll The Show at AOL.com. And I will send you that handout so you don't necessarily need to take tips during this time. Someone said they think their first show was Barnum, Evita. I would have loved to see Evita. That would have been a fun show to say in that sense.
Brian, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
My first show was Cats back in 1985, and I think I was maybe like I guess 12 years old based on that timeline. And I wish I'd seen it when I was older because I don't think I would have appreciated it very much. I think it was maybe fifth or sixth grade. I probably was moving around a lot, although I didn't get yelled at to sit still. But I remember seeing Phantom of the Opera and Les Mis in my late teens, early 20s, and thinking as a 30 or 40 something year old, I would have enjoyed it much more than at that young
What did
age.
you
But it's great to start
what
early.
did you think of Cats? Because Cats actually did have a revival prior to the pandemic that didn't last long.
I really enjoyed it, and I'm trying to remember as much as I can. But one thing that we did was we got the T.S. Eliot book of poems that the musical is based on. And after the show, and I can't remember who it was, but one of the actors was so gracious to sign the book for all of us kids, and I still have it some, almost 40 years later. So,
Oh
uh,
wow.
yeah, definitely a memorable experience.
Very cool. And I see here some people are just sending in all their shows. Julie said Jesus Christ Superstar. Valerie said Phantom of the Opera. That actually will be, as I think it's well known now, will be closing in February after I'm not even sure if it's 25 or 30 years on Broadway in that sense. And I'll mention how I think you could still get cheap tickets to that show. Um, so one of the questions that I'm going to answer from the top, because it actually leads to this rush tickets, is Patty says, I live on the Upper West Side and can easily get to Broadway the day of a performance. What are the best shows to get tickets on the same day for? And Patty, that answer is partially getting rush tickets. The shows change. There's a website that I'm going to put up at the end of the section. I think it's BroadwayRush.com. I have to double check on my sheet here. And basically, that's where they list all the shows that are offering same day rush tickets. There's also the TKTS booth in Times Square that I'll mention as well. So, my first tip and how I started to see shows was rush tickets. Many productions put aside a limited amount of tickets on the day of the show to be sold at a discount price at 10 a.m. when the box office opens or noon on Sundays. And general rush tickets can be purchased by anybody. There's usually a limit, though, of 1 to 2 tickets per person. Some productions specify an age criteria in order to get rush tickets. Sometimes you need that valid student ID. As you can see, my Binghamton ID is there. And I still have it. I don't think I could get away with it. If I maybe shave off the mustache, I could, people would think maybe I still look like that. But now, depending on the popularity of the show, depends on how easy it is to get those rush tickets. Sometimes you can walk up to the box office right when they open or anytime throughout the day. I've gone up to the box office about 5 minutes prior to the show actually starting and just asked them casually, do you have any rush tickets? And surprisingly, they did. On the other end, there are shows that become like blockbuster hits that offer rush tickets, and people start camping out like it's Black Friday at 4, 5, 6 a.m. in order to secure those rush tickets. And back in my heyday, I somewhat was one of them. You can see me on the bottom left there. This was me when Les Mis reopened on Broadway. That was around 5 a.m. to secure a rush ticket for the show. And you can see these people that were in front of me, and they'd already seen the show in the past. It's also cool being in the theater community around 10 a.m. On a weekday or a weekend to see the lines of people just waiting at theaters to get rush tickets. So my number one tip is before you go to the TKTS booth in Times Square, go to the actual theater of the show you want to see and ask them, do they have any rush tickets? Because you'll be pleasantly surprised. Those rush tickets go between usually $30 to $50. And sometimes, as you can see on those tickets that I have posted there, it may say a partial view, and I don't want anyone to be discouraged by that. All that means is you'll be sitting on possibly the far left or the right of the orchestra, and you may miss like half a second of the production if you're in the wings, but usually everyone goes center stage. And I've had amazing rush tickets in that sense.
We still have people texting in with their first show.
Yeah.
So Laura says a chorus line, and I heard that was coming back in 2028 for a 50th anniversary. And if that happens, all
Yeah,
I
I
can say
think
is I'm
so.
so there because I saw it when it came to Binghamton. They had it at the Broome County Forum, and that was just amazing. And Ellen writes in, my first show at maybe 6 or 7 years old was My Fair Lady with Rex Harrison and Julie Andrews. Parentheses, I'm old. Well, me too. But I saw Broadway shows constantly as a child because my uncle was a stage manager on Broadway and got us free tickets. Another show seen very young was Marriage Go Round with Charles Boyer and Claudette Colbert and Julie Newmar. Met them all backstage.
Wow, that's pretty
That's
cool about
great.
being able to go backstage. I mean, the only times I've gone backstage is I actually did go once when Hamilton was in its heyday. I was able to get to go actually on the stage for a few minutes, which was pretty cool. Um, and so my number one tip there is before you go to the TKTS booth in Times Square, if you've made it into the city for the day or you're close to Broadway, just go to the box office of the show you want to see and ask them, are they having any rush tickets available? You could also ask them if they have any standing room only tickets available. Standing room only tickets are usually only sold, it's on the day of the show when the show is actually sold out, and the tickets range between $30 to $50. There's a limit of 1 to 2 tickets, and usually it's standing room only. You stand in the back of the orchestra, and for the production. The great thing about the standing room only tickets, as you can see here from Dear Evan Hansen, it's a great view. You can really see the whole. Have a great no. You don't have people blocking you or things along those lines. And one of the best things that most people don't know is, let's say you're not happy with the seat that you have a tall person in front of you or something along those lines. If there's an intermission, at intermission, you are able to move up to a better seat. That's when if you see an empty seat. Once I saw 700 Sundays with Billy Crystal, and I went with my mom. I bought us rush tickets. We were in the last row of the theater, which was a great view. But I saw on the front row on the aisle, there were 2 empty seats. And so during intermission, I told my mom, quick, let's go move up. And we ran downstairs to the front row and got those seats, and we saw the rest of the production from there. And the people sitting next to us looked at me and was like, we were wondering when you'd show up. We were so worried about you. And I was like, we got stuck in traffic and just made up a lie in that sense. But anyway, so there's Rush, there's standing room only, and then there are the digital lotteries, which someone was just posting about in that sense. And what digital lotteries are is they're on usually a day in advance. They're through different websites like Lucky Seat, Broadway Direct, Broadway Booster, which is through Telecharge, and the app Today Ticks. And you're able to enter to win tickets for their same price as rush tickets in that sense to see the show. And you go on to the sites, like, for example, on the far left here, we have Hadestown. That's through a site called Lucky Seat. They do all the shows for Jujamcy theaters. So there's Hadestown, there's Book of Mormon, there's Funny Girl, and there's Into the Woods. And I think Moulin Rouge is the last of them. And you can enter up to a week in advance, which I think is great. So you select which day, what shows you're able to see that week. And then if you want 1 or 2 tickets, and then they will send you an email, I think at least a day in advance, letting you know if you've won, and then you can purchase those tickets. Sometimes the tickets are actually emailed to you right away, and you have a PDF of them. Other times you actually pick them up at the box office prior to the show start. Then there's sites like Broadway Direct for shows like The Lion King, and usually that same day, either starting at 9 a.m. or at midnight, and you'll see in blue if the lottery is open or not. And you enter, let's say, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then at 3:01 on the dot, you'll get an email if you've won or lost for the shows the next day. And you can purchase your tickets right then and there. And then, as you can see on the far right, that's the lottery entry form that you fill out. It's very quick. First, last name, how many tickets, 1 or 2, email, birth date, zip code. And that's about it. And it's like the New York Lottery. You have to be in it to win it. I've won, you lose more than you win, but I've won fairly a lot of lotteries in that sense. So I highly recommend, if you've won a lottery, I'd be interested in hearing what shows you've seen which lotteries you've won in that sense. And this is an email that I got when I won Hadestown. And it gives you a limited amount of time to actually purchase those tickets. So I highly recommend if you enter a lottery, sometimes they're nice enough that they'll send you a text message to say check your email. But make sure you check your email at, let's say the lottery ends at 3, check it at, a little after 3, because you may only have a half hour window or an hour, 2 hours to actually purchase those tickets. And you don't want to check your email later on and find out that you lost, like you won, but you couldn't get those tickets because you timed out. Let me just take a sip here. And then there is the Today Ticks app, which I highly, 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 highly recommend that you download onto your phone, your smartphone. And I'm actually just going to open it up here on my phone here. This is what it looks like. And they have a lot of different shows and discounts on here. They do digital rush tickets. And instead of having to schlep into the city at 10 a.m., you just go on your phone at 10 a.m. and you can purchase a rush ticket to a show. I did it for the first preview of Death of a Salesman when that reopened, which I really thought was a great production. And they have digital lottery as well, where you can enter and you'll find out, like 3 o'clock the next day if you won. And they also offer discounted tickets to shows. So it's a win-win. So I highly recommend the Today Ticks app that you can find. And then there is TDF. Usually when I give this talk, I'll ask by handful how many people are TDF members. And there's usually at least a few that attend these talks that are TDF members. And TDF is the Theater Development Fund. They're the people that run the TKTS booth in Times Square. It's a nonprofit organization, so you're supporting the arts. And the price of a membership is, I think it's now $40 for the year. You can get discounts for $35 sometimes. And when you have your membership, it changes frequently. So the shows that are listed, so I highly recommend that you check the website daily. And this is from last season where they had a ton of shows that were listed. Right now, they actually have a pretty nice chunk. There's around 19 shows that are listed. And you would see the listed shows and you click on the one you'd want to see. So here, let's say you want to see Dear Evan Hansen, you click view, and it would give you the upcoming performance dates and the price of the ticket. The price of the tickets now are, if I'm correct, for musicals, it's around $60 a ticket, and plays are $50 a ticket. And the great thing is you can get up to 9 tickets, and you can get them up to a week or so in advance. So if you're having friends or family coming from out of town, I think this is a great way to see shows. You don't get your tickets emailed to you. You go to the box office about at least a half hour prior to the show, and you pick them up, and that's where you find out where your seats are going to be. Most people I've talked to that are TDF members have always had great seats to see the shows.
Starting to get a few people writing in
Yeah.
about their success with the lotteries you may see. So Ann writes, I saw Into the Woods this past weekend from the lottery. And Patty says, I won the Hamilton lottery last month and got 2 front row center tickets for $10 each. How awesome is that?
Wow. I want to say for I think it was Ann that's all Into the Woods. Is there a reason that you didn't send me an email to go with you? I've been wanting to see that show. I mean, I saw it twice, but I'd like to see it again with the new cast. As you can see, there's also people like myself who are quote repeat attenders that will see a show multiple times. The most that I've seen a show is around 5 or 6 times. That's for Hamilton. And there are people that will see shows into the double and triple digits of the same production. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to mention here about TDF from my notes. They also offer off-Broadway shows and off-Broadway shows. So if you live, let's say, on Long Island or New Jersey, they offer shows at some of the regional theaters there. And then they offer just shows off Broadway. So it could have been something like Jersey Boys. Yes, it's a very good question that someone asks, can anyone join TDF? And TDF, you need to qualify to join. I usually have a video here you can find online that goes over what you need to qualify. Most people tend to qualify for TDF. You're retired, you work for the city or state. I makingly say there, I joke that it says that you can be a priest or clergy. So I say go on to the My Faith Ministry, take the test. You're now a priest or clergy and you qualify. But I haven't heard of many people that haven't qualified. But it is something that you need to qualify in order to get. I think I said the word qualified more than enough times there. And then there's the TKTS booth in Times Square. They also have other locations that I think are now opening. At least Lincoln Center is opened. And you can get tickets for the same day or a day in advance now from 20 to 50% off. Back in the day, you actually had to go to the city to see the board, the famous board here that would list all the shows. Now you can go online and see it. So you don't actually have to schlep in, or if you're in the city, you don't have to go there to check the shows. And then there are the young adult discount policies. These are for usually the nonprofit theaters like Roundabout Theater, Lincoln Center, and Manhattan Theater Club. Um, the ticket prices are between $25 to $30, if I'm correct. And you can buy tickets in advance when they go on sale. You're actually given a discount code. And the policy is for people that usually under the age of, I think it's now gone up to 41, that you can get discount tickets for these nonprofit theaters that offer these great productions in that sense. And then there's the complimentary tickets. Who doesn't want to see a free show? And I've seen a good number of free shows over the past decade or so. And I've done this through a variety of ways. My number one tip is becoming a volunteer usher. The volunteer usher, for that, you can send me an email at stolltheshow@aol.com. That's where you can also get the handout that has all of these tips on them. And for the volunteer usher, you would get an email from the house manager with a sign-up sheet. And this is for places like Manhattan Theater Club and Second Stage. Second Stage right now has the Kite Runner, and Manhattan Theater Club has the Cost of Living. And I'm actually going to be volunteer ushering this weekend for the Cost of Living, which is getting great rave reviews and was extended. So you sign up on the calendar when you're able to volunteer usher. You only have to do it once. And you show up to the theater an hour in advance. You dress in all black. So if you're coming from a Waker funeral, even better, you're properly dressed. And usually all you do is you hand out playbills, or you point to where the restrooms are. They have paid ushers that usually do the rest. And for doing that, about 5 minutes prior to the show starting, the house manager will actually assign you a seat to see the show. So it's a great way to see Broadway shows at the nonprofit theaters for free. And that's at the Second Stage and Manhattan Theater Club. There are also off-Broadway theaters that offer volunteer usher tickets, volunteer usher as well. The other thing I want to say are the seat filling services. These are called papering sites. They're Gold Club, Play-by-Play, and Will Call Club are the top ones. And basically, to make a long story short, they are paid memberships, so they start between $20 to $100 for the year, and they offer tickets to a variety of events, from Broadway shows to off-Broadway to plays to operas to concerts, dance performances, children's shows, comedy shows, sporting events, lectures, and much more. I say if you're someone that is in the city or goes to the city a lot and likes to experience culture and try new things, it's a no-brainer to join one of these sites. I've been a member Play-by-Play for a while. They've had a lot, but they haven't had as much in recent years. They're on the $100 a year. I have actually recently joined Will Call Club that I highly recommend. And the price of the tickets is either $4.50 or $5. And that's it that you pay. And similar to TDF, the price of the membership pays for itself in the ticket. And you're welcome to contact me, because I know I'm going very quickly over all of these. So if you have any detailed questions, you can ask me then. Yeah.
Just got one that came in. What was the app where you can get the digital rush ticket?
Great question. The digital, that is called Today Tix. Today Tix. Yeah, I was going to spell it. It's a little early for me in the morning here. And I highly recommend downloading that app. And they have the Digital Rush, and they also have lottery tickets as well for a lot of the hot shows. Especially with a lot of shows opening in the next few weeks, they'll be offering a lot of Digital Rush and Digital Lottery tickets for those performances. So let's see what I have up here next. And we're coming to the end. Anything else? We're coming to the end here of the discount ticket portion. And this is all alternative ways to get tickets for discount for Broadway shows that I've used over the past couple decades, or past decade. I'm aging myself there. Broadway Roulette is one of them. I actually haven't used it, but I've heard people who've had great success. I think it's $40 to $50. And basically, you say if you want to see a play or musical, you can somewhat narrow that down a little bit more. They spin a roulette wheel. If you've ever played roulette, I haven't. And then you get tickets randomly to a show. So I say this is great for someone who hasn't seen a Broadway show in a while. It's a win-win. You get cheap tickets and you get to see a show. There are, let's see what we have on the screen here. We have like Broadway Box and Theater Mania and Playbill. They all offer coupons. A lot of times you get mailers, things in the mail that say save 20% off the price of the ticket. The only thing they don't tell you is all the additional fees that you're going to pay. So my tip there is to take your coupons to the box office, and you can save on all the fees there. I have a picture of Cole's Cash there. That wasn't an error. That was there to remind me that similarly how Cole's Cash doesn't expire right away, your ticket doesn't either. If it's through Telecharge or Jujamcy Theaters. Basically, to make a long story short, let's say you're not able to make it to the show and you have your ticket. You can call up. If it's Telecharge, you can contact me and I'll give you the info. And you call them. I've done this a couple of times for Telecharge. You call up on the day of the show and you ask them, are they honoring past dated tickets for that evening's performance? They'll check their list. If they are, they'll ask for your ticket number and they'll have a new ticket waiting for you at the box office. So I say, if you're not able to make it due to a family emergency or just missed the show, you still may have a chance to see that production. Here are my go-to sites for rush tickets and for everything about discounted tickets. My new site that I'm putting up is bwayrush.com. There was a site that I used called Broadway for Broke People that is still somewhat active, but they don't have as much new information on there. So I really like this site that I found a couple days ago. And then there's Playbill's website. Both of these are on the handout that I can email you from if you send me an email to Stoll The Show at AOL.com. And so this is all the discount ticket information. What I'm going to take a sip of water and then we'll talk about for the next 15 minutes or so is about the playbill, which I find actually really fascinating. Any questions coming in, Steve? Or you have any comments while I'm taking a sip here?
So far, it's a little quiet on the questions, although I'm sure there'll certainly be more. But we'll put my email address back up. Certainly, if you want to contact Brian, I will put Stoll the Show at AOL.com back on the screen as well. But yeah, definitely interested to hear about the history and the mystique of the playbill, and I've got a few, like I said, from way back in the day, and it's something that be tough to part with. Although, I didn't really maybe appreciate it at the time as a kid. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you hold on to it, like you do other things, and it's like you go up in the attic. It's like, wow, I got all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
As a older person, I was gonna say a grown up, but as a grown up, you certainly appreciate the significance of it.
Well, I'm going to mention in a few minutes about how the worth of playbills and the value of them. In case you actually decide that you want to part with your playbill, Steve, you can contact me. So anyway, the playbill was founded in around 1874 by a gentleman named Frank Van Staus, and he began by collecting ads from the Madison Square Theater of the production May Blossoms here, starring DeWolf Hooper. And because the playbill was such high quality, audiences were collecting them as souvenir. So Strauss, along with some other publishers, started to create leather-bound volumes and journals specifically for those who collect playbills, which leads to the overpriced playbill binders, which I have a ton of them. in case you're wondering how I save my playbills. And a lot of people wonder that I have all these playbills and I don't know how to save them or protect them. The Playbill store actually sells binders and sleeves for your playbills. And the company is now in the hands of Philip S. Birch and his family. The company is around 138 years young, and it switched hands 5 times. They have a factory in the Playbill factory is actually in Queens, where they ship to over 134 theaters across the United States in that sense. And they have their website, which is very popular. During my extended version of the talk, I share a great video that I think is on my Facebook page that I'll put up in a bit as well. And it's from New York 1 on stage with Frank DeLella. And they go behind the scenes of the Playbill and the Playbill factory, which is really fascinating to see how playbills are made. So why playbills matter? The playbill constituted a central point of articulation between the theater and the public. In short, the playbill is a primary document for theater historians. And by examining an old playbill, you can learn about the production it is promoting, the theater itself, what was happening in the theater society, as well as society in general. I thought I also would quickly put this up here. I found an article from the LA Times a year or two ago that talked about this. If you've been to a Broadway show recently, you probably see a lot of people. I don't have the good dexterity to hold my cell phone and the playbill up in front of me to take a picture, but people do this for various reasons. One says, I don't do it for likes. I could care less, meaning on social media. It's more of a way of documenting it, so I don't have to go back into my box of playbills to remember what I've seen, which is pretty smart, just to have them on your phone. So the part of the playbill I want to talk about briefly is the advertisements. If you take a glimpse, this is a sample of advertisements from the 19th to the 21st century that I scanned from a bunch of playbills that people gave me. And it really gives you a glimpse into the temper of the times. And I'm going to put up 4 or 5 of them here to quickly go over. So first is a Happy Legs ad, which is from 1974-ish. And this one shows actress Meg Bennett. And it says actress Meg Bennett knows what to wear on Sunday when she won't be home till Monday, which I thought was a little seductive in that sense. And there's another one that shows here's an Italian opera singer, and it says, singing is my living. I smoked a mild cigarette that agrees with my throat, and it would say no one single case of throat irritation due to smoking Camel cigarettes. If I were to ask you what Disney film this reminds you of, you probably would say Cinderella. And this is from the 1950s, and this is promoting General Motors Motorola Expo of the 1950s. And finally, we have what I thought was just a nice ad for women in the service. I think this is the 1940s, and it's a female service lady. And until further examination, I didn't realize they were promoting women's undergarments. It said hard training may entice you to wear uniform, but only the right foundation can make your uniform look its best, look younger, feel more flex, your figure contoured sleekly by flexies. A question we get from Yolanda is, do you still have to wear a mask in theaters or is it optional? That's a very good question. For most Broadway theaters, it is optional. There are a few of them, like Second Stage, where they have the kite runner, and I think possibly Manhattan Theater Clubs for the cost of living, that you do need to wear a mask. Some of the off-Broadway theaters still require masks, but for most of the Broadway theaters, it's a mask optional policy. So you do what you feel comfortable with. But they'll even have announcements. I went to see Samuel L. Jackson in the piano lesson recently, and they had, before the show began, they usually have an announcement saying to turn off your cell phones, and it was Samuel Jackson saying the announcement, which was fun. And he also encouraged people to keep their mask on, to put their mask on to protect him and the rest of the audience. So the actors are still fighting to have people wear masks. Here's an ad from a 1956 playbill, and it says, basically, if you're interested in saving your playbills for future reading, send us a check or money order and we'll send you a binder. Those binders today go for about $50 a piece. I sent this check about 4 years ago. I'm still waiting on my $2 binder. So here we have the Wall of Fame and the Wall of Shame. The Wall of Fame are the current longest running Broadway musicals. And here they are. Phantom of the Opera with over 13,773 performances. Chicago with over 10,130 performances. And The Lion King with over 9,731 performances. There's a restaurant in the city or a pub, I haven't been there, called Joe Allen's, and they have all the window cards of the Broadway flops. These are the top 3 Broadway flops. You have Moose Murders, Glory Days, and I actually found this playbill. The Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All. How could that not been a hit? All of these shows opened and closed on opening night. And I asked people why they collect and save their playbills, and these are 5 of the responses I received. I consider them to be historical artifact and a way of recording something that can't be recorded except in one history, as video and cast recordings can never replicate a live performance. I have 3,782 playbills. I started going to the theater in 1963. I keep them in a 6-foot long bookcase in my living room. The only thing they didn't give me is their address so I can steal them all. Looking at them evokes a number of good memories, and with the number of shows I've seen, it can be difficult to hold those memories in any other form. For some reason, having something tangible makes it easier for those memories to come to mind. My wife keeps telling me to get rid of them, but I do occasionally look back and I enjoy the look backs. I frequently discover I've seen some pretty famous people before they were famous. I'm also reminded of the great productions that are not always remembered. And finally, I live in France. So I don't have much access to theater, so having memorabilia from shows I missed but wish I could have seen gives me something to connect with, which gives me great comfort. The final reason someone may collect a playbill is if they're involved in a production. I interned briefly after college at Manhattan Theater Club's Samuel J. Friedman Theater, and for Airline Highway, my name was actually in a Broadway playbill. Can you see it there? No? Let me zoom in for you. There we go. Brian Stoll. This usually gets a standing ovation in person, and I have a bunch of these that I'll autograph for you and send you for $6 a piece if you're interested. Getting back to when Steve was saying how he had all these playbills and he didn't know what to, like he didn't say he didn't know what to do with them, but I wanted to mention that people have come up after the talks and they've asked me, I have all these playbills and I'm going to be moving or downsizing and I don't want to throw them out, but I don't know what to do with them. And there are a variety of places that you can go to sell your playbills. People have actually started to give me their collections. This was someone's collection that they gave me. It was 53 binders of playbills dating back to the 1930s. There's around 1,000 playbills here, and I was able to sell her collection for around $1,000. The average playbill goes for about $5 a piece from my experience. And what I found, which is surprising, you would think it's the older ones that are worth more, but I've actually found it's some of the newer ones from recent shows that are for more money. The most I've sold a playbill for was a copy of my Hamilton playbill when it was at the Public Theater, and I got $200 for that in that sense. So I'm going to go pretty quickly through the rest. There's not too much more that I have, but I wanted to go over a little bit more about the playbill and some fun information, and then we will wrap it up. So I just wanted to mention briefly, around 1567 is the earliest that I can find information about an actual playbill being printed. And it was for, during the Elizabethan period, a swindler called Qualities managed to entice a large audience into Northumberland House in London by advertising an antique performance by the means of a playbill. After collecting half a penny from everyone, he left the audience, and everyone's wondering when the show would begin until they realized they'd been duped. The play never existed. So I think the earliest evidence we have from an actual show is one that never took place. Here are 2 playbills from Vienna, Austria in 1791 and 1840 in Scotland. They're fixed form, 1 page in length. You really had to carefully scrutinize them because they had a lot of information. It was around 1750 that actors entered the public gaze, and they would be listed in the playbill along with their credits. And if they were out of the show, it would list that and things along those lines. Let's see what I have here. I'm going to quickly show you some covers of playbills throughout the decades. This is from 1866 newspaper style. Then we have from the Winter Gardens from the 1930s. The cover was the same for every show that took place, featured romanticized color illustrations promoting idealized art, but had little to nothing to do with the show. Finally, the title of the playbill appears in the 1930s in that sense, but there's no show title. Before it was called the Playbill, I think it was called the Strauss Magazine Theater Program, which was then changed to the Magazine Theater Program, which was then changed to the Playbill, and is now just Playbill. Here we have Annie Get Your Gun. That's from 1946. That's when the show's title finally appears. Promises, Promises. This was a standard look from the 1960s. And then they had a tricolor logo during the time for Grease in the 1970s. If you haven't been to a Broadway show in a while, this is the type of cover you recognize. There's a separation, I say, between church and state with that white border around the cover. This was from Chicago, and this is the cover from the 1970s to 2016. And depending on the show, depends on what they put on the cover. If it's a more concept, they'll use concept art. If it's more about the actor in the show, like 700 Sundays or An Act of God with Jim Parsons, they will go on the cover because that's what sells playbills. A lot of people collect playbills for a variety of reasons. Here we have Mamma Mia. This is from their 10th anniversary. Wicked's 5th and 10th anniversary, it went Wicked Green. And in honor of Gay Pride Month is, as of 2014, it goes rainbow color. And these are all examples of collector's editions of playbills. History is constantly repeating itself in the form of revivals. Sometimes I wonder if there's any original concepts left. The most revived show in history is Porgy and Bess. And here you can just see two different covers as the shows have changed. And then lastly, we have all these covers. This is from Chicago, which has been on Broadway for, I think, 25 years, if I'm correct, in that sense. And let me see, I'm going to skip over that. I'll skip that. And this is my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Stoll The Show. And on here, I post all different money saving tips of how to see Broadway shows for discounted policies, especially as they're announced. And I also share when I'm giving other talks. And if you've enjoyed this talk, it's always great if you could go on to facebook.com/Stoll The Show and you can leave a review there. You could contact me here as well if you don't have my email to get a copy of the handout. And that is, if I'm correct, all I have. This was very much abbreviated. There's a lot more. I can go on for hours, as you could probably tell. But just for time's sake, this is what I wanted to share with you this morning.
Brian, thank you so much. And we still have about a little bit over 5 minutes till we get to 11 o'clock. So if you have questions, go ahead and get those in. Shoot me an email at sseepers@binghamton.edu. And if you're watching on Facebook, we put the link to Brian's Facebook page on there. I'll just go ahead and say it out loud. Facebook.com/Stoll The Show.
Yep.
And Stoll, a play on words on his last name, of course. And I'll put up a different banner. So if you would like to reach out to Brian with any questions or to get the handouts that he referenced, and I'll leave that up for a couple of minutes if you want to go ahead and jot that down. And he's very willing to share information with those in the Binghamton alumni community and also outside the community. But I know you do a lot of talks around the New York City area, Long Island, where you're based, and have started to do this virtually. So if there's been one bright spot because of COVID, it's the ability to reach people well outside the area that you would normally travel to close to your home, and can reach Broadway fans pretty much anywhere. So we have a comment that just came in that says, this is from John. This looks amazing. Thank you. So we're starting to get some positive comments from people watching. So thank you to those. It wouldn't be a show without you. Go ahead. Sorry, Brian. I think I stepped on you there.
The only other thing I was gonna add, one thing I can recall about Broadway and things along those lines, is there used to be something called second acting. This was more, I think, in the 70s. And basically, you had like the young Matthew Broderick's and Denzel Washington's, and they would actually sneak into the theater to watch the second act of a Broadway show. And the ushers would actually help them to find seats, which I thought was pretty cool. And there act people who have second acted thousands of shows. There was a great article a few years back in the New York Times about it. Um, I don't know if I could ever second act a show, even if they let me in for free. I feel like I need to watch the first act. I mean, if my mom's 15 minutes into a show and I just joining, I'm still wondering what happened prior. And So a lot of comments of thanks you, saying thank you for for me giving this talk, and I'm more than happy to in that sense. And I thought I'd also mention, this is a good point for me to mention about the stage door. Steve, are you familiar at all with the stage door? Did you mention anything? I can't recall.
I don't know. I'll share this before we get into the stage door, and then I'll pop off
Yeah,
camera but come back in. Susanna is an interesting idea. I would love if you would organize an event for alumni with a discount for us all to go. That could be
true.
fun.
Yeah, I that is a good idea. One of Ruben Santiago Hudson, who is a proud, well-known Binghamton alumnus, he actually has he's had shows on Broadway in the past, and I think they may have had some alumni going to those shows. I don't know if I'm able to actually, I probably could work with Steve and we can maybe plan something possibly in the future. What I wanted to say, if I'm trying to think, I was losing my
Think about
train
the
of thought
stage
there,
door.
Steve. Yeah, the stage door. Thank you. The stage door to me is the icing on the cake. After you've seen a Broadway show, you can exit the theater, you make a left or right, and there's usually a barricade set up. And that's where the actors exit and enter the theater for the show. And if you're lucky, you'll catch them coming out and you can have them sign your playbill. They will also post for pictures and things along those lines. Most of all the playbills that I have are autographed in that sense. So I highly recommend, if you're able to go to the stage door. Some of the shows haven't been active due to COVID, but that changes in that sense. So I highly recommend the stage door.
Still getting some more comments. So thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. I know it was a little bit early with 10 o'clock start time. It seems like that worked out very well. More comments from people that really appreciate this information being shared and are thankful, Brian, that you've spent the time with us. So this is going to be up on the alumni Facebook page. So it's Facebook Live and then archived on Facebook and then also on the micro site if you're watching there as well. And then we're going to send links in the alumni newsletter when it comes out in a couple of weeks. But I'd say if you know people who would benefit from the information being shared, and it seems like there's so many Broadway fans out there, share the links around and help us to get this information out there. And we had a conversation at home, and my wife said, I really want to see Hamilton and I want to see it without having to spend a ton of money. And so my my very smart alecky response was, you know what? Watch the webinar Tuesday at 10. So, but she wasn't able to because she has some work obligations. And so, if you know somebody that just wasn't able to tune in at this time, whether they're in the alumni community or external to it, we're all Broadway fans, whether we're Binghamton or not. So, definitely share it around. And I know Brian would be very appreciative of that
Yeah,
as well.
and for Hamilton, you can tell your wife there's an app she can download. It's actually called Hamilton, and you can enter the lottery for not just Broadway but all the touring productions, and that's how I've won tickets in the past. So highly recommend that.
So, we've got about 2 minutes left. Brian, any comments before we wrap it up?
Not that I can think of. I mean, there's so much stuff to talk about. I'll probably end this and then be like, can we come back on later? Because I have more stuff. But I think that's about it for now.
Well, Brian, thank you very much. And so it's just great to see how much passion you have for Broadway and how thrilled you are and that others are that the shows have come back. And now we can go back to doing the things we love and that you're generous to share your time with the alumni community to pass along this information so that others who have that love of it can express it, and those who maybe are not as exposed to it but have an interest can develop that love over the years. And certainly it's something you can do your whole life. And I know I'm going to go back through and go into boxes in the attic and try to find these playbills. And I'm not ready to part with them, although I'll say I saw the binders, and I definitely don't have enough to even do half a binder. But the shows I've done have been very, very memorable. I hope the chorus line thing in 2028 is happening, because I'll drop what I'm doing to go to it. But I'm sure pick up some more playbills along the way in the years in between now and then. So, Brian, thank you very much, and certainly appreciate everything you've given to us this morning.
You're very welcome.
And thank you to everybody who has been watching today. And I'll pull up one more graphic before we sign out for today. Check us out, binghamton.edu/alumni. Our next webinar is going to be back in the noon hour on Wednesday, November 9th, with a program called The Road Back to Legality in New York. It picks up where we left off, sort of, from a tier talk we did in Westchester County back in 2015, 2016, which I know most people watching did not attend, but it was looking at the evolution of cannabis over the years. And so a lot has happened and is happening, and there's a tremendous amount of interest in cannabis. And so that's going to be the subject of our webinar November 9th with Neil Kaufman from the class of 81. He's an experienced attorney representing companies that are in the industry. He was one of the speakers for the tier talk we did back when, and will be with us November 9th for the Road Back to Legality in New York. So the link to sign up for the webinar is on the website. Join us for that or other in-person or virtual events. Volunteer, do the lifelong learning offerings, do it all, do some, but definitely stay connected to us. So for Jen Gabriel and Brian Stoll, I'm Steve C. Prasad. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and thank you so much for joining us.